All right, let's take a look at today's warm-up. You were asked to split each figure into two shapes, such as a rectangle, a triangle, and a trapezoid. Shade them each a different color. So looking at this first shape, we should have a rectangle and a triangle. Okay. The next one, we should have two rectangles, and you can kind of do this different ways. You could have split it here like this, or you could have split it the other way like this. Okay. The next one, we can do a rectangle and a triangle. Same here, we have a rectangle and a triangle. Here you can do a couple different ways. You could split it here and make a trapezoid and a rectangle, or you can split it here and do a triangle and a rectangle. The arrow will make a rectangle and a triangle. And then this one, we can do two rectangles. You can split it this way, or you could have split it the other way. Here we have a, looks like maybe a square. This is a square. And then here we have a trapezoid. And then finally we have a rectangle and a triangle. Okay, so all of these figures are referred to as composite figures because they are composed of more than one shape. Composite figures. And we're going to be learning how to find the area of these composite figures. The biggest challenge usually when finding the area of these composite figures is finding all the measurements that you need. So that's what we're going to focus on today. So let's look at the note side of your paper. And there's some facts that we already know that are going to help us complete these tasks today. So first off, congruent means they have these same measurements. On a square, the sides are all the same. They're all congruent. So if we know one side of the square, then we know them all. Rectangles, the top and the bottom are congruent, and the sides are congruent. And on parallelograms, the top and the bottom are congruent as well. So on this first figure, this first composite figure, we have a rectangle and we have a triangle. And we need to find the base and height of each one. So the rectangle has a base here and a height here. So I can see that my height is 4, but the base I'm not sure about, okay? This 10 refers to the entire distance across, and that's not what I want. I just want the rectangle part. But if I look on the other side of the rectangle, I see that 6 centimeters. So that means this part is also 6 centimeters because the top and the bottom are the same. So the base of my rectangle is 6. Now let's look at the triangle. The base of my triangle is this part right here. It's not all of the 10. The 10 is more than what we want. And that part right here is 6. So if I take to see what's left, then 10 minus 6 gives me 4 centimeters for the base of the triangle. So my base is 4. The height of my triangle also happens to be the side of the rectangle, which is 4. So the triangle also has a height of 4. Okay, let's look at our next shape. The next shape, we have 2 squares, one on each end, and then we have a parallelogram in the middle. So let's start with the squares. We need a base and a height on the squares. And squares have all the sides are the same, right? So if that is 3, then so is the base. So the base and height is 3. My description also tells me that the squares are congruent. So that means it's the same over here. This is also 3 by 3. They're identical. Okay, so that leaves me with the parallelogram. Here's the base of the parallelogram. And the bottom of the parallelogram is the same as the top. So that is a 6. And then my height is 2.8. It is labeled there. So 6 and 2.8. Okay. Next one, we have a parallelogram and a trapezoid. On my parallelogram, I have a base of 26, so that is labeled. But the height is just this part right here. I don't want the whole 32. So I'm going to take out the part that is the trapezoid, which is this part right here is 16. So if this much of it is 16, then that leaves 16 for the top half where the parallelogram is. So my height of my parallelogram is 16. For my trapezoid, the height is also 16, right? And then I need 2 bases on a trapezoid. So the bottom base is 40 and the top base is 26. So 40 and 26. Okay, let's look at our next one. This figure is a little more complicated. We've got a rectangle, 2 congruent triangles, and a square. Okay, so if we start with our rectangle, the base of the rectangle, what's the base of the rectangle? That's right, it's going to be 18, just like the top. So my base of my rectangle is 18, and my height is 6. Okay, my square, I can see that the height is 6. So what is the base? That's right, it's also 6 because on a square they're the same. So 6 by 6. Okay, and then my triangles, the base of the triangle is also a side of the square. So if the square is 6, then so is this. And then my height is already labeled here as being 6. So it's 6 by 6. And then the other triangle is congruent, right? So that means it's the same measurements. Okay. All right, let's look at this last shape. We can see that we have a square in the middle with 2 congruent triangles. So if we start with our square, our base here, what is our base? That's right, it's 6. All the sides of the square are 6, which means the height here is also 6. So for our square, we can write 6 by 6. Okay, for the triangle, that means that the base of my triangle, because I'm kind of looking at it sideways, is also 6. And then the height is 4. And since the other triangle is congruent, it is also 6 and 4. So those 5s are just extra information. We don't want to use them because they're the slanty sides, and we never use the slanty-sided measurements. Okay, all right, so your assignment today is in Schoology, and it's going to ask you to do the same thing. It's going to give you some shapes, and you're going to figure out what the missing measurements are using what is labeled on the picture.